welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast. And for our fourth segment of today's show, we're going to be talking about the MLB yet again, getting into my first ever power rankings for the show as we get into the full swing of spring training. These are the teams that are going to be heavily monitored, not just in spring training, not just at the start of the regular season on opening day, but throughout the entirety of the MLB season, whether they end up being as good as we think they're going to be or underperforming expectations. But without further ado, let's get into the top 5 teams that I feel are deserving of their place in my first power rankings. Starting off at the bottom here with the New York Mets. This is a team of destiny. This is a team of culture. This is a team of identity. And the big question, though, is going to stem from their newest arrival, Juan Soto. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, how he fits in this locker room with positive guys like Lindor, like Alonso, like potentially Iglesias. Again, how this team coalesces with Juan Soto's personality now within their ranks. But I'm not worried about it right now because we haven't really seen them play live games, because on paper, this team is the most talented roster potentially in the entire MLB at first glance. Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso at the top of the order. Guys like Brandon Nimmo, Jose Iglesias, Jeff McNeil contributing above average hitting. Potential bounce back year for a guy like Francisco Alvarez, and being able to retain pitchers who you really like and want to continue to build around, and Sean Manaea and Paul Blackburn. Bring in AJ Minter to shore up your bullpen. Bring in a guy like Clay Holmes to add to the back end of your rotation. And this Mets team really now looking every part of not just an NL contender, but a World Series contender, and willing to be the team potentially to challenge Los Angeles Dodgers for NL supremacy. But to no one's surprise, they're not going to be the only team from the NL East within these rankings. They're not going to get this there yet, because we're going to be talking about number 4 team in my rankings, their crosstown rivals, the New York Yankees, who they quote-unquote stole Juan Soto from. Now, the Yankees, in many different aspects, if you look at how they addressed the loss of Soto, you could say they got better, at least defensively, which to me is more important than retaining a player of Soto's caliber, because it was glaringly clear that they were one of the most terrible defenses in the MLB last year. And it was in spite of that defense that they got to the World Series. But by looking at their moves, by bringing in veteran guys like Goldschmidt in the infield and Bellinger in the outfield respectively, and then signing, finally, to much fans' relief, a left-handed pitcher in Max Fried to bolster their rotation and give it that variance that it so desperately needed, and still being able to have Aaron Judge, a fantastic power bat in this lineup, and rely on guys like Anthony Volpe, Austin Wells, and Jazz Chisholm to continue to improve, you're setting a foundation for yourself where, without a generational talent, you still believe your championship window is firmly open if you're the New York Yankees. You don't necessarily have to rely on a Juan Soto caliber player to get the most out of your lineup. And they're starting to appreciate that aspect. And with the additions of Bellinger and Goldschmidt, they could decline offensively, but on the back end of things, and the bright side of things, most importantly, you have 2 defensive stalwarts that you can rely upon that immediately fill that glaring area of need. And then, of course, Max Fried just allows you to go lefty-righty a couple more times in your rotation schedule. So it's very intriguing now to see this Yankees team moving on from Soto, but still feeling like their window of contention is firmly open, and I believe so too. but it's going to be a tough season if these pieces that they brought in don't necessarily develop the way they want them to. But I'm still giving them the benefit of the doubt ahead of spring training. And then at number 3, the first of the 2 NL East teams ahead of the Mets in these power rankings, the Atlanta Braves. And this one is just more about the return of Ronald Acuna Jr. Because with the return of Ronald Acuna Jr., it just adds depth to the outfield, makes potentially one of the most dangerous outfields, both offensively and defensively in the league, and just allows this Braves team to feel like the sky's the limit again. Because for all the times Ronald Acuna Jr. has gone down, you feel like their hearts sink to the bottom of their throats. Braves fans and the Braves themselves, so to speak, because they know he's the heartbeat of this team. And now that he's back, there's going to be a spirit about this team where they know that from 1 to 9 in their batting order and in the infield and outfield when they're playing defense, they know they have a heartbeat, a vocal leader, a identity guy that's going to keep this clubhouse together. Because I truly feel that they're a different team when not just guys like Olsen, Riley, Harris are performing, but when Ronald Acuna Jr. is there to hold it all together. So that's what makes them so dangerous. And yes, they lost Max Fried, but still, Spencer Strider's a top-end guy who a lot of teams would love to have as their number 1 starter in the rotation. So the Braves are looking much better than they were heading into the offseason. Ronald Acuna Jr. potentially not immediately going to come back, but still that optimism that he will come back eventually, and potentially with the Braves having a big lead in the NL East to look forward to, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s return can only mean good things for that roster. So the sky's truly the limit if I am the Atlanta Braves. But then again, like I said, they're not the only NL East team besides themselves and the Mets in these rankings, which leads me to my number 2 team here, the Philadelphia Phillies. And now, the thing about the Phillies, that this Phillies team is starting to get the feel of that late 10s, those late aughts, early 10s Phillies teams for that matter. Because in 2008 they won the World Series. They continuously made the playoffs after, but never truly got back to the precipice of winning a championship again. They bring in Bryce Harper on a 13-year deal. Now he's entering the 6th year of that deal. He's hit 152 homers over that stretch, but now it's the back half of that contract. If they don't win something with him now, then I don't know when they will. But this is their best roster. They have speed on the base pass in Trey Turner. They have power bats in Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber. They have elite pitching in Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez. They're going to have to look to retain Ranger, though, after the end of this season, as he could be a hot commodity as well on the free agent market in the coming years. But for now, this Philadelphia Phillies team, to me, represents a team that finally looks like they have the talent and potential to get going in the NL. Because to me, the problem with the Phillies is that they always seem to lose their cool in critical moments. Last year was against the Mets. A couple years ago, potentially the Dodgers, got their number. But I feel like this year, the NL is so wide open, so undefined, to the point where even though the NL East is going to be the toughest division, the Philadelphia Phillies are going to be a team that no one wants to face. Because I feel like they're going to head into the postseason on a high in terms of confidence, rather than, being afraid of what's going to come ahead. That was their problem, in my opinion, a couple of years ago. That was their problem last year against the Mets, because they potentially either get too overconfident or they allow teams to get going in these series to the point where they get themselves out of their heads and out of the series as a whole. So that's why the Phillies are such a complicated team, but in terms of talent, they are the team challenging the Dodgers, in my opinion, in terms of NL supremacy. But until someone knocks off the Dodgers, they will remain the number one team heading into spring training as the number one team in my power rankings. Because look at this team. This is a team that only got better this offseason, and their biggest offseason moves, in my opinion, were not even those high-profile signings of Sasaki and Snell to add depth to the rotation. They were the retaining signings of Kike Hernandez, of Tommy Edman, that really stood out to me. That goes to show that this culture is here to stay for this Dodgers team. It's not going anywhere. And the fact that they feel like they can continue to build on it and are willing to do so to extend this championship window for as long as they possibly can, that's incredible to behold. Because this team just seemingly never says die. And last year was finally the year we saw them break through, battle their demons in terms of actually getting over the hump in a regular World Series tournament-style format. And now this year, they're heading into the season as the best roster on paper, but also in terms of just pure talent. You could have potentially two Dodgers rosters that will be competitive in the NL. That's how deep they are, and that's how deep they'll continue to be, because this is a team that's willing to spend big to continue to win and also have the young talent that they're willing to invest in as well. So, the LA Dodgers, for as long as they can continue to prove on the field that the best team in MLB, will not be knocked from this perch for quite some time. So that concludes my top 5. There are some dark horses that we might want to mention, like the Rangers and Orioles in the AL. Potentially, some teams in the NL as well. The Brewers could be seen as a quote-unquote dark horse. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because coming up next, we transition across the pond to preview a very intriguing top half of the table clash between Aston Villa and Chelsea. Will either of these teams truly contend for the top 6? We'll talk about it right after this short break.